The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
2025, here we are. Happy New Year, everybody. Leigh, Happy New Year, my cohort in crime. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's going to be the best year yet.
Absolutely. And our look at this. Our esteemed guest, Jennifer, is back for more.
Hello again.
It's good to have you back. Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I'm happy to be here.
We ended last year, Leigh, we ended last year on a powerful note. We talked about powerful women. And it's great to see that our both of our episodes, but the second episode in particular is actually starting to go viral.
Yeah,
Which
Lisa
is
with Lisa Bain.
with
She's
Lisa
just
Bain.
amazing. Yeah.
It's going viral, and surprisingly, nobody has called me on my gaffe yet.
That's good.
I'm sure it's coming
Well,
soon.
don't point it out.
Yeah, well, no, now I did.
We really called him out on it, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah.
It was Lisa and I. There was no mercy, but
Yeah, I honestly didn't know. I was completely naive to it, and then when I went back and I actually asked my wife, she goes, "Oh, good God!" So
you'll have
that
to
was,
listen to it, Jennifer.
yes,
I won't. I
exactly.
won't reconstruct it, but
No, exactly. Well, we ended, the beautiful thing about the Sustainable Voice and working with both of you and with you, Leigh, is because of the fact that we are always calling out either organizations or factors because we're trying to show big successes in small places. And sometimes those successes come at a painful cost. And we want to highlight the people and organizations and even societies that are making those steps. So we're starting this year out by basically being a myth buster to start off, right? I mean, that's the
I
show.
like
So
it.
Jennifer, let's remind everybody about your background, your education background, and why you're back on our podcast, because I think it's important for the topic we're about to start.
Yeah, well, Ashish likes to call me a sustainability expert.
Mhm.
I studied as sustainability in college, and in the travel industry, I took a sustainable travel kind of 101, but pretty extensive course that lasted 10 weeks. And it's just a passion of mine, so I do a lot of self-education, but I do know a lot about sustainability and how it pertains to both the travel industry and just the world at large. So here to talk about that.
Fantastic. And today we are talking about carbon offsets. This is a taboo phrase. It's a positive phrase, a negative phrase, a corrupt phrase. I mean, it is an overused phrase.
Agreed.
And this is a three-part episode that we're going to be doing for the Sustainable Voice. One of our, I guess what you call it, is basically a resolutions for New Year's, is we're going to drill down deeper on some of these topics. And if it requires more than two parts, then it's going to be more than two parts. We heard from our listeners, we heard from all of you that you like the topics we were talking about and you want more. So we're going to spend this year drilling down a lot more on these topics and being able to go into more in depth. And remember, the focus of the Sustainable Voice is to create thought-provoking ideas. When you get done with each episode, we are not asking you, our viewers, to take sides. We are simply asking you to open your mind and think things through and think independently and think for goodness sakes, think for yourself. That's really all we're asking.
Mhm.
Love it.
So let's jump into it. The first part of this episode, or the first episode, we're going to be talking about carbon offsets. We're going to be talking about what they are. So before I jump to you, Jennifer, Leigh, let's talk about carbon offsets. How many times have you heard that phrase?
When we picked this topic, you know how triggered I was. I was so triggered by this. And I'm so glad that we're doing it. I mean, it just, I've also almost become numb to it because you hear about carbon offsets all the time. I, for one, don't understand it. So I'm glad Jennifer is here with us today. And because I don't understand it, I think I just put my head in the sand about it. And really, I'm just very suspicious that it's even real or that
As you should be.
yeah. So that's my take on carbon offsets right now.
Well, and we're going to be drilling deeper into this because, one of the things and one of the reasons why Leigh and I wanted you on this podcast again, Jennifer, is Because oftentimes the thought belief was, let me just find a company and just pay them to offset my carbon, and then I'm good to go. There is no
box check.
such, box check. This is not an easy get out of jail free card, or a collect go, pass go collect 200. This is not Monopoly Go. This is not an easy one. Just check the box. You have to put the work in, like anything in life. You've got to put the work in. There is no such thing as a free lunch. I don't care what people tell you. So, Jennifer, let's start off. You and I have a lot of experience with this. Leigh, the expedition ships that you used to work for, a lot of them offset carbons now as well. So let's start off here. Jennifer, can you summarize for everybody in layman's terms, what is a carbon offset?
Yeah. The idea is a simple one. A person or a company, more often, has a goal of how much carbon they want to put out into the world or into the atmosphere. So if they go over that goal, they can purchase an offset, which is sold by a company who invests in things like planting trees or wind farms or things that either take carbon out of the atmosphere or prevent it from being put out in the first place, to make up for that. So let's say a company like Starbucks has a goal of 10,000 tons of carbon emissions per year. They emit 15,000 by the end of the year. So they go to a company or companies and pay some amount of money, which we'll get to make up for that 5,000 tons, so that they can meet their goal and say, oh, we only emitted 10,000 tons because we offset the other 5.
So if I was somebody walking down the street and said, I plant trees as well, I'm offsetting carbon, what would you say to them?
It depends on who I'm talking to.
That's a good face.
It depends on who I'm talking to. Planting trees is great. It might take that tree a long time to sequester or, take from the atmosphere any amount of carbon that has any amount of actual impact. One of my soapboxes that I like to get on is taking care of existing trees. So I usually start with, if somebody says, "Ooh, I planted trees," I'm like, take care of those trees that are already there because they're taking out so much more carbon than that one that you just planted. But that's a different soapbox. So planting trees is always good. There are other things that are better.
Okay, let's talk about those better things. The phrase that comes up is leakage.
So that was I was going to dive into offset criteria. We've kind of put it down to 3 things. An offset has to prove permanence. So that means that the offset must be permanent or the rate of decline of that offset has to be accounted for.
Okay, wait, hang on. I do vector calculus all the time, and I'm a math guy. You had me at rate of decline. I'm an economist by background. I'm a math guy. So you got my attention. Rate of decline. You have my attention.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
You go.
No. Let's see.
Okay. So an example would be, an example is if I have a forest that I am selling as my carbon offset because it is sequestering, taking out so much carbon, that forest has to be there forever. Or if we know that timber companies are going to come in and take out those trees, we have to account for the amount of trees that we're going to lose. So that's the rate of decline.
Let's dive because that's interesting. Let's dive more into that. Leigh, when you were up in the Northwest, obviously logging was a huge part of the industry there. It's obviously part of the conversation now with Canada and the US as well. When you talk about rate of decline, Jennifer, where does logging fit into that? And I want to preface this because a lot of people will come to me and say, well, we still need to have paper. We still need to be able to function with paper in some form. Does carbon offset mean no logging?
No, it just means you have to account for the logging. So an 80-year-old tree is going to sequester far more carbon than a 15 or 20-year-old tree, which is, I don't know much about logging, but you don't let the trees grow to 80 years old before you cut them down. Right. So you just if you have a forest that is turning into old growth that has a lot of old trees that are taking out so much more than these newer trees, there has to be math involved to account for how much less carbon the little trees take out.
What about mangroves?
I love
Let's talk
mangroves.
about those. Okay, let's talk about mangroves. And I'll tell you what, because I got some experience with this, but I want to hear what you got to say because I have a feeling it's gonna be pretty profound. So let's talk about mangroves and what that looks like. I'm putting
You
her on
always
the
expect
spot.
so much from me, and I do appreciate
Hey,
that.
I'm telling you. Hey, what did we talk about the last episode with the way we are always putting people in a position of success. And you know what? The last episode that we had with you, the comments that we got back from people who heard what you had to say was incredible because they were listening to everything that you were saying there. And honestly, here, you and I have had in-depth conversations about this, about carbon offsetting and the pitfalls, which we'll get into in episode 2. But I love your approach to this, and I think that it breaks it down to the simplest form. So, and I saw your face light up when I said mangroves, which is why I said it on purpose. So let's go. We're going the mangrove way now.
Just about how much carbon they sequester,
Sure.
or I mean,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
great. They not only the amount of carbon that they take out of the atmosphere, but the amount of habitat that they provide for fish and the amount of what they do for the world cannot be overstated. It's just they're a fantastic ecosystem, and if you don't know anything about them, do a quick Google. They're so good.
Look, and this is important. I have a lot of experience with red mangroves and replanting red mangroves as part of carbon offsets and whatnot. And if anybody wants to know what Jennifer's talking about, red mangroves, picture this for a second, okay? I want you to picture a brush and a dustpan, to put it simply, okay? And I want you to picture there's a bunch of dirt, sediment on the ground and there's some fine rocks or fine crystals in those sediment. And you go to sweep that dirt or that sediment into your dustpan. And you'll notice right away that stuff gets separated, and you could see where the crystals show up. Better example is flour. For those of you that love cooking, if you're flour, you have a sifter and you are putting the flour in the sifter, and you're simply going through, and you could see what's coming out and what's left is pure. That's actually the role of mangrove. That's what the roots do. That's actually a huge part of what they do for fishermen all over the world. And it's especially true in places like Colombia. It's especially true. I was just actually at a whole mangrove farm up in the very northern part of Peru, right at the Ecuador border. And this is amazing. Jennifer, do you by chance know how much oxygen, how the multiple of how much oxygen mangroves put out versus
I don't have
trees?
that number in my head, but I would love to.
10 times.
Ah,
It
that's
is
so good.
10
They're
times.
magic.
10 times. They're
Mhm.
magic.
Yeah.
They're magic. Leigh, any experience with mangroves when you were out exploring the world?
Yeah, I just actually a few years ago took a as for fun, took a small ship cruise with the girls down in Costa Rica, and we went paddled through the mangroves, and it was incredible. I realized how magical they were when I was there, and wow.
Yeah, it
Something
works,
we
I'm
could
telling you.
touch on real quick. The
Yeah.
palm oil industry is destroying mangroves. So if you didn't know, which a lot of US viewers probably don't, it's pretty big over in Europe, but palm oil is very, very bad for the environment. If you see it on an ingredients list, just put back whatever you're looking at.
And I want to add something to that because I am very conscious about ingredients that come into stuff, and you know what, I know what's going to happen. We're going to get a comment back, and it happened actually on our last episode, the episode you and I did, Leigh, on the first part about powerful women. There was some Yahoo that tried to post something on our Instagram channel that actually tried to make things political. He called me an asshat, first of all.
What? Man, I missed that. I don't read our comments. I
Well,
guess I should start reading the comments.
Instagram actually blocked him right away before I could say something.
Oh,
I was like,
good.
come on. I was waiting for the chance to respond to him. I love picking
I
fights.
bet you did.
But it wasn't, I mean, the name I thought was funny because he actually spelled asshat wrong. So I thought that was funny, but
That's
he was
a good start.
but he was making it political. And and so here we are talking about carbon offsets, and it's the same thing. It's going to get political. We're going to have people that are going to make certain comments about this. And you know what? That's what this is for. It's to be able to remove the politics from this. And we're going to get more and more into that as we talk about other episodes. Something that you have talked to me about, and I want to come back to palm oil in a second, but I want to say this to you because you have talked about emissions, increased emissions, right? Don't break one thing to fix something else. So don't bring two things to two other things to fix one thing, right? You talked about not increasing emissions with carbon offset. What does that mean?
Well, let's go back to our Starbucks example. If they realize that their goal is 10,000 and they emit 15,000, they can just purchase offsets to negate anything. They can emit more carbon and just pay for it, especially with how cheap it is. And so there's no accountability. There's no incentive to reduce the amount that they're producing because purchasing a carbon offset is so cheap and these companies have lots of money. So they just throw money at it and emit as much as they want instead of doing any real solution, which is reduction.
Right. And that's exactly where I was hoping you'd go with this, because that seems to be the common consensus. Well, I could just pay somebody and here, I'll pay for the offset. Don't mind me the garbage I'm dumping into hotel and into the water. And this is important because there is a particular hotel. I'm not going to name the hotel because I don't want to shame them. There is a particular hotel that's in South America that actually did do this. They were caught dumping garbage into the ocean. It was the most pristine parts of the waters on their coastline. They were caught dumping waters. But when you look at their literature, they're carbon neutral.
Mm-hmm. They're good for the environment. Yeah, there are so many companies.
How is all? Can you explain to me how all that's measured? Like, how does Starbucks know how much carbon they're emitting, and how?
Simple question, very, very complicated answer.
Let's go. I love this answer.
Well, lots of math. Like you have to take specific examples of. I don't know if we're using, I like Starbucks. I'm not trying to shame them or be mean to them.
I like them too. Yeah.
But let's say that they, their CEOs travel for whatever company, for whatever meetings they have to go to. Their plane, their private jet that they're flying on has an amount that it emits. And so that is one piece of the calculation. All of their workers, all of the cups that they buy has a amount of carbon that is emitted to make the cup. So that is all added together and then added as a piece into the equation. Every piece of their operating like structure has to be broken down, and then a number is assigned to it based off of how much carbon is emitted from that one thing or how much greenhouse gases, because there are other gases besides carbon that are harmful. And so it's just a myriad of a bunch of different things that we have to calculate. And a lot of companies don't even calculate it. They just kind of go about their business and business as usual, but responsible companies at least look at what they're doing and calculate how much they're emitting and then take whatever steps they will to reduce.
And that's a great question that Leigh asked, because there are companies that compute it. I would like to drill deeper on that. How do you know their equation is right?
Yeah, that's the whole thing for me.
It's don't. There are no checks and balances in place, which is a whole other rabbit hole we could go down. But there are companies that do it well, and there are third parties that you're hiring. Starbucks is not doing this math on their own. It's very expensive, and you have to know a lot to do it. So they're hiring a third party to come in and audit and do all of these things. But there is no governing body over these agencies that do the calculations. So that is a big problem that you just pointed out in our whole structure of how we are handling the global climate crisis.
What about self-policing or self-reporting? There are companies that will control their own carbon output. The company I'm affiliated with actually is doing that right now. What about that in terms of saying, you know what, we will measure it ourselves, we will find the formula, and we will measure it ourselves and be able to visualize it, to observe it, to check it, to make sure that what we're saying is happening, to basically have a set of parameters to ensure transparency and to ensure accuracy and to actually ensure that it really is an offset. What do you say to companies that do that? And forget about the company I'm affiliated with. That could be any company that does it.
I love the idea of it. And if people who run the companies, if people were honest and good, I would say more power to you. But as we all know, people can be not honest and not good, and they can do things to maximize their profits while greenwashing their entire face to the world. So it's a good idea, but if there's no check, there has to be checks and balances in place. If there's nobody looking at what math you're doing and saying, oh, hey, here's a mistake, or here's something that might not have been a mistake, maybe you did this on purpose to try to greenwash, there just has to be another set of eyes on it, in my opinion.
So what we've covered so far, and Leigh, I'm glad you took us down this path because it's the path we need to go through. So if what we've covered so far as a proper definition of a carbon offset, we've talked about what the offset actually is. We have talked about the lack of regulation in how it is policed and how the equation is done, how it's policed, and how companies are being genuine or disingenuine about their offset. Then we've also talked about the different types of trees and taking into account logging. We're not trying to say, well, the world should stop moving.
No.
Right. So let me
move in a positive direction.
Right. So let me stop here for 1 second, because there was something, Leigh, when you and I last year, you and I in a very early episode, we were talking about sustainability. And I always get triggered when I see people on social media saying sustainability is not an option. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's a choice. Yeah. It is an absolute choice. And I want to preface it because what Jennifer's talking about, and I can already see there are some people rolling their eyes right now going, oh, here we go again, another Greenpeace, another episode on Greenpeace. The hippies are at it again. Oh, here we go. Here come the screaming liberals. Hold on. Right? That's not what this is about. This is not political. This is not about this. It is snowing in Jacksonville right now. The hurricanes have gotten wider and wider and wider. You can call it whatever you want to call it. You can call it climate change. You can call it anomaly. You can call it, Bucky Dent. I don't care what you want to call it. But there is something happening that is changing. There is something that is happening that is different. And there is something that is happening that is causing a cleanse of sorts, right? We can call it whatever we want to. And I'm not going to use the environmental word. I'm not going to say it's labeled this or labeled that, or whatever the case. I am simply going to go back to something that we've said in episodes years ago, that this is a choice. I don't care whether you agree with me or not. I want you to do your own research. As viewers, I want you to simply take the politics out of it. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care what party you're affiliated with. I don't. Because I think they all don't know what they're talking about.
Say it again.
Yep.
They really just don't. Nobody's doing it well.
No.
There are some who are doing it worse than others, but...
Yeah, worse and less worse.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, bad and horrible. Yeah.
That's it. And what do we talk about elections? Oh, it's the least the least horrible choice. Yes. I mean... That's a whole separate topic. So to all of our viewers, those who are rolling your eyes right now, I'm going to start off 2025 by telling you, I don't care about your political affiliation. I don't care about mine. I don't care about yours. I don't care, because that's not what this is.
Exactly. Completely separate. It has nothing to do with politics.
Exactly. I want you to crack open a science book, and I want you to take a look at water temperatures and just do one thing for me. Take a look at the average increase of water temperatures between Cuba and Key West. Just that one section. That's it. Nowhere else, just that one section. Just take a look at the average increase in water temperatures, okay? And then go find out why it increased. It certainly isn't because the water just simply got warmer because the sun's hotter.
Yes.
Let's just think about that.
There are other things at play. Correct.
I don't want you to take my word, Jennifer's word, Leigh's word as gospel. I want you to think for yourself. I want you to crack open a science book. If your science teacher, science professor is still with you, go and ask that person questions. If your physics professor is still around and you're in contact, go and ask them questions. Go and talk to them. I'll never forget, and this is not about this part, but this is something that's very important. So my professor in the senior year of university, I had the pleasure of having a professor who was part of the national security team for presidents Kennedy, Johnson, Ford, Nixon, I mean, whatever order they go in. But he was every major part, Cuban Missile Crisis, Bay of Pigs, every major event, Vietnam, he was in the Oval Office. And he was sharing. And I remember before he passed away, I was talking to him. Even after I graduated, I would go to him and say, Professor, what do you think about this? I'd love to get your insight on this. And he would, of course, go, oh, why are you bothering me? You didn't take the civil services exam. You're my biggest disappointment. Why are you bothering me? And then I would say, Professor, I understand. I'm sorry. I beg your forgiveness, please. But I am thirsty for knowledge. I'm curious. Yeah. And the only opinion I trust here is yours. And he goes, why? I said, because you have nothing to lose. He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, you're a grumpy old man, which means that you have nothing to lose. You are really well educated. The knowledge that you have is something that we are losing. And he gave me his insight. It was short words, but he gave me his insight. It applied. If any of you have that kind of a relationship with a science professor, with a biology professor, physics professor, if you live in a state that leans away from this, go talk to a weatherman. Go ask them. They'll tell you, because if this wasn't real, they'd all be unemployed. So I want to preface that. Now coming back to Jennifer, what you are talking about. There's a part here, and back to Leigh's question about verifying what's real. You use this word with me, verifiability. Or verifiably, I think is what you had said. And I think that's a great word. What does it mean?
It means that somebody else comes in and looks at somebody else who knows about the topic. So somebody who knows about carbon emissions and carbon offsets comes in and takes a look at what is being claimed and verifies if it is actually happening, which is not happening in the carbon offset industry nearly enough.
And we're going to get into, so when we talk about part 3, solutions, as to how we can actually make this where it is verifiable. We're going to get into solutions, real world solutions that work. I want to stop for a second and just unpack what Jennifer just said when we're talking about third-party verifying. Everybody here is basically saying right now, or not everybody, I shouldn't say. I'm sure there are people who are listening right now saying, I don't need to have a third party verify that. Why do I need to do that? You're the same person hiring a golf pro to work on your golf swing. You're the same person hiring a tennis pro to work on your tennis swing. You are the same person hiring a business consultant, or you are the business consultant coming in to help run a specific business. You're the same person hiring an accountant or a financial firm to audit your books. So don't tell me you don't believe in third-party audits.
You can't be an expert in everything.
Right.
Everybody, yeah.
Right.
I have an open invitation. Anybody who doesn't agree with any topic that I have, come on the show and debate me. Come on the show and debate me. Come on the show and debate. I still have an open invitation for somebody from the IMF to come and prove my math wrong. But come and debate. I have an open invitation for the former Vice Minister of Tourism to come and debate me about the job she's doing.
Maybe you need to get the asswat.
Asswat
guy.
Yeah.
The ass.
Yeah. Get the ass hag on here.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't think he can put 2 sentences together based on the way he wrote.
Okay.
But I want people to think about that, right? This is no different. This is simply third-party verification. You do it every single day. You sign into your computer or you look at your phone and have it unlocked to you. Multi-factor authentication, 2-factor authentication is a way of life for everything we do. 2-factor, a third-party authentication is the same thing as a multi-factor authentication. Why wouldn't you do this?
Right.
We are not sitting here, and Jennifer said it best, we're not publicly shaming Starbucks. We don't have lawyers big enough that could take them on. So we're not publicly shaming Starbucks. Plus they got more problems than this.
Right.
So have you seen their share price? So we're not publicly shaming companies. We're simply asking for a more cerebral approach. And Jennifer, your eyes lit up when I talked about the fact that none of our elected leaders understand this. Now, I'm not going to go all Greta Thunberg on them, right? She has a pretty valid point too in what she's saying, a very valid point. And instead of listening to her, we're making fun of how she delivers that point.
Yeah. Well, to discredit her and
discredit her. Yeah, exactly.
There are reasons.
Look, I want to draw a comparison to prove to people what we're talking about. I want to draw 2 people. Forget about their gender, okay? One person is sensational they're both sensational on YouTube. They are both streaming and they are both going viral all over social media. They get millions upon millions of followers. They both have something that has clearly captured people's attention for right or wrong reasons. They are both being discredited in different ways because of their popularity. more so than what they have to say. Do you know who they are?
No clue.
One is Greta Thunberg, obviously. You know who the other one
Sure.
is? The Haktua girl.
Oh, God.
That's the other one.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Wow.
What value does she bring to the equation besides corrupting young girls' minds on what the idea of being decent really is, right? And I'm not trying to be all holier than thou here, but I am a father. I have a daughter, and my point here is that if we're going to, anybody who's listening right now is saying, "Oh, here come these Greenpeace guys. Here comes this again. Oh, here we go again." I want you to think about that for a second. I want you to think about that. We are giving more credence to somebody who is not adding any value to society in terms of intellect. It's just simply cheap entertainment.
We do that everywhere. Look how
Mhm.
how much we pay sports stars and how much we pay teachers. That's just a human occurrence at this point. It's the way that we've set up the system, and it's not good.
I'm going to give it a name right now. It's called the Kardashian complex.
Oh, I like it. Let's do it. Because really, what are they at?
Please don't sue me. I'm sure they've trademarked that name. But think about it, right? We have been any of us who have been raised the right way, and that's most of us, have been raised the right way. We've been raised to do and say the right thing. What are we talking about here? We are talking about simply opening a topic. So all of our listeners, and thank you for subscribing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this journey. We're growing by leaps and bounds. I am not trying to publicly shame you. Jennifer and Leigh are not trying to publicly shame you. We're simply telling you to take a more cerebral approach. Just take a step back and think for yourself. Don't let any of us, don't let any political leader, don't let anybody who is an influencer try to tell you one way or the other. We have lost the ability to think for ourselves. For God's sakes, just think for yourself. If you don't believe what we have to say, cool. Back to my earlier statement. It is a choice. It is not this whole thing about it's no longer an option. Yes, it is. It is always. Everything in life is a choice. We can choose to listen. We can choose to be in defiance. We can choose to protest. We can also choose to be ignorant. We get to choose whether we're going to give credence to something like the Haktua girl, or we can choose to give credence to somebody like Bill Nye the Science Guy, or to other people that actually are shaping society and shaping the way the world is.
Yeah.
There's a professor that's in my son's life that he said something to me that I will never forget. I remember back in, I want to say 2000 actually, back in 2000. There was this whole talk about colonizing the moon. And people just
Great idea.
People just like, what are you talking about? This person is a politician. This guy's a blowhard. He's crazy and whatnot. And now somebody else is talking about it. Wow, great idea. Fantastic. Yo, that's a great idea. Yeah. You know what the two people were? Newt Gingrich and Elon Musk.
That checks out.
24 years apart.
One has a cult following, one does not.
There you go.
There
you go. And again, why is something popular now, but the same people saying, yeah, Elon, great idea, 24 years ago, and saying, what an idiot, what a doltard. Why would you say that? Right? Think about this for a second. This is what I mean. We need to be able to think creatively. So we have defined what a carbon offset is. Leigh, do you have a clear understanding what carbon offsets are based on what Jennifer has said?
I understand what it is. I still have so many questions and I'm still so skeptical, but at least I understand it. So I'm hoping as we move forward with our episodes, I'll get a clearer picture.
We'll get into examples next time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say something that you're not going to like. The next episode, I'm going to make you more skeptical because we're going to talk about worst practices in the next episode before we get to solutions. It's got to get worse before it gets better. Much like most things in life.
I think all you're going to do is confirm what I already think about it. So
you know what you just said is exactly right. A lot of what we're talking about is going to confirm what people either already believe or they choose not to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Right? One way or the other, we are going to confirm where you're heading. This is not about trying to sway your opinion. Remember, I said in the very beginning, We are not trying to sway anybody's opinion here. That's not what this podcast is about. We're simply, if we get you to after each episode go, what does that mean? Cool. Job done.
Yeah.
That's a successful podcast. We did it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the step. Whether you believe us or not is entirely up to you. Just take the politics out of it. I don't care who you voted for. It doesn't matter. It's focused on science. Form your own opinion. We're going to talk about this more in the second episode. We're going to get into skeptical. We're going to make you more skeptical because we're going to talk about worst practices. Like everything in life, there are some pretty bad actors.
I'm here for it.
And I'm not talking about Steven Seagal.
Form your own opinions now.
I had to say it. I couldn't help myself. So,
okay.
Till next time, everybody, thanks for listening. Remember, if you want to be the success in your part, you want to be the one making the change, think independently. Take care.
Thank you for listening to The Sustainable Voice. If you have a success story of your own, please reach out and share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.